Jake, we heard from pretty much every high-ranking official at BYU this past week about the Jake Retzlaff situation, and where the university stands. And where the university stands is we've made our statements. We've said everything. We're silent. And what this tells me is they're not going to pick, and they really can't pick a side. They're not going to come out and say, hey, we fully support our student athletes to the nth degree, in that we will stand behind Jake Retzlaff in this situation and defend him until the end. And to the contrary, they did not say, we fully support and believe the victim, whether the case has been fleshed out or not, and we will say in their favor, Jake Retzlaff is no longer a member of our program. Instead, it's that weird middle ground of, we will sit at stalemate until a year and a half from now things are figured out. And if that is the case, we've certainly learned that Jake Retzlaff's season is done.
Yeah, it sure feels kind of that way, Drake. The biggest thing that they've been citing is privacy concerns, because there is a Title IX investigation going on as part of this. And when you have Title IX involved, that means the federal government is involved, and there's all kinds of different legalese and red tape that you don't want to cross a line that you just frankly can't when it comes to situations like this. But you're right. Them referring back to their previous statement, it was the thing I expected to come out of it. They were going to reference back and say, hey, we can't comment much further than we already have, and we're going to have to leave it there. However long this drags out, it means that Jake Retzlaff's playing status is very much in question for this upcoming season, because if they do let it go all the way to trial, the latest I'm hearing, well, I guess the earliest I'm hearing that this would go to trial is mid to late next year, speaking of 2026. So that takes out the season. If that really is what they're going to do, I'm very curious to see maybe over the next 30 or so days if some movement happens on that front. And I'm not trying to prognosticate anything, because they would like to have some resolution one way or the other, I'm sure, if you ask them, give them some truth serum. But for the time being, they really can't say much more than no comment.
So can I not use names here? Let's think of a prominent quarterback in college football, Danny Smith, which is an oddly BYU name. They had Dan Smith, actually.
I was about to say that fits right in with the BYU program right there.
But let's think of Danny Smith is the Heisman Trophy winner playing at Clemson. Right. And honestly, you can pick any of these elite Clemson college quarterbacks and just picture in your brain them accepting the Heisman Trophy. Yeah. And they have another season coming up. Now, not to say, obviously, Jake Retzlaff's a Heisman contender right now. I don't think he is. But if that guy, the week after winning the Heisman Trophy, expected to come back for his senior year, junior year, whatever, is accused of something, I find it very hard to believe it's not in every headline ESPN covers every day. Right? Quarterback in Tennessee, quarterback in Ohio State, quarterback in Texas. This is the headline every single day, and we figure out some sort of answer or resolution in far less time the more high profile it gets. I struggle to believe, again, fill your brain with any major quarterback who's won the Heisman the last 10 years, and then tell me we would wait a year and a half post Heisman Trophy, post high profile, post that to figure out what their status is. I do not know if I believe that.
And that's why I say the next 30 days are critical on that front, because that takes you to right around Big 12 Media Day time, when obviously the national media will be asking Kalani Sitake, Brian Santiago, all the brain trust from BYU about that on the record down there in Frisco. And that's why I think these next 30 days will be very curious to see if there is any movement on that front, because it might be the most critical 30 days, unless, as you mentioned, they're really intent on waiting this out. But it doesn't feel like that is in anybody's best interest to let it play out as long as it might.
Yeah, Cody, JT, again, we're dealing with obviously a very tough subject and a very fragile topic. So I want to clarify again, this is the Big 12 squad. This is not a true crime podcast. There are those who will cover this from a line-by-line case study. For us, it's the implications, and while our thoughts are with the alleged victims, our thoughts are with Jake Retzlaff, all involved. Our role as sports podcast hosts is to talk about the ramifications on the BYU football program and the bigger picture with the Big 12. Do you think this opens the door at the top for more teams to possibly compete and give you an opportunity to maybe create even more parity or chaos at that level of the Big 12?
Theoretically, of course, it does add more instability to the top of the league, especially in a conference that appears to be pretty quarterback driven. But broad stroke, I would say no, because it is still BYU. Even when BYU isn't the cream of the crop, they still produce guys like Taysom Hill and Zach Wilson and that Darren Hall dude. And then they have Jake Retzlaff essentially came out of nowhere. Now, in a quarterback-driven league in the NIL era, you want to have a cornerstone that, if you want to recruit to this quarterback, it is going to help you in the transfer portal and in the high school realm. So you want to have that. But I feel like Kalani Sitake hasn't been overly competitive in the portal because he's really understanding of what he has. Is Retzlaff going to be lost? Absolutely. Yeah. But I think if anybody in the conference has proven over time that they probably have somebody waiting to go, it's probably BYU.
Well, and Cody, to your point, the thing you talk about BYU in the portal, Kalani's whole thing is BYU's got money. There's no doubt about that. They got money for NIL. That's just very clear. But the one thing Kalani's been very clear about is, we're competitive in NIL, but if you're coming here just for a paycheck, this is not a university for you. It stands for more than just paying guys to come play football because it's a faith-based institution. It's got a bigger purpose in the grand scheme of things in their eyes, and he's going to meld those two things. They'll be very competitive in NIL, and JT knows this as well as anybody. BYU took two of Utah's guys they would like to have had, and money was a big part of it, but more importantly than that, they wanted to be part of something they felt like was more than just collecting a fat NIL check.
Well, going back to what Drake originally posed about, like, hey, does this open up a spot? I think the potential of that is yes, potentially. And obviously it would be more likely that yes, if Jake Retzlaff does not play, it's when every time you lose your starting quarterback, it's not as likely that BYU would be in the top 4 of the conference. But I also remember a couple of years ago when Utah at the time had Charlie Brewer, someone Drake remembers very well. And then Cam Rising was actually ended up being the better option. Jake and I called high school games back in the day for McKay Hillstead. I'm incredibly high on his ability. Cody, you talked about the transfer portal. That was a big transfer portal addition for them last year, and that was a quarterback battle last year too. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, a little bit for that starting spot too. So Hillstead's a guy, played at Utah State. He can do some things. They also added the Stanford transfer as well. So they have other guys in there that are capable of stepping up. I do not think you can cross BYU out if Retzlaff is not in the equation. And obviously it's still a very complicated equation, as you mentioned. That's why I think BYU is making the right decision not to provide any updates while we still wait for this thing to all go to trial. But there are still a lot of intriguing options at quarterback for BYU if Retzlaff is not one of them.
And there are Cougar fans who will tell you that BYU won in spite of Jake Retzlaff versus him actually winning games for them. I would butt back against that because I thought he played a big role in a lot of big wins for BYU last year. But there's very well could be the case that a guy like McKay Hillstead does emerge. The question is, how quickly can you resolve whatever it's going to be, the playing status of Jake Retzlaff, so that he knows he's the guy and can prepare as such?
Jake, how much confidence do you have in the McKay Hillsteads, in the Stanford transfer, whose name I can't remember?
Bear Bachmeier is, okay, Cody, you want to talk about the next Taysom Hill? Bear Bachmeier is the name to know. 6'2", 225 pounds, and he's a more of an athlete playing quarterback versus a quarterback who's an athlete right now. I think given time, he can really morph into a really fantastic prospect of the position. But at McKay Hillstead, you want to talk about a quarterback who's an athlete. That's McKay Hillstead. He's a true dual threat. Now, he stands 5'10". He's not the tallest guy in the park, but JT, you and I called games when he was $160. He is rocked out to about $190 now in terms of his weight. So he's got the weight to be able to hold up. The question is, like I said, how quickly can he really exceed to being the guy for BYU and ultimately, hopefully win some football games if Jake's unavailable?
And he was shaking 4-star recruits back then, like shaking tackles off of those guys, getting around them. So it's not like he didn't play good competition. We know Utah has some really strong high school football players, especially over the last few years. And Hillstead was absolutely one of them. So like I mentioned, you cannot cross BYU off regardless of what ends up happening with all of this.
Nailed it.
It's just a very enlightening conversation. Maybe we just do like Big 12 squad pods. Yeah, rhyming there.
Squads.
3 or 4 Big 12 squads a week and shrink it and have really very strong.
It was very strong. I almost didn't show up, but Drake begged me to come on. He missed me so much. He was texting me the entire first few minutes. He was just saying, JT, I need you. And I know you do, Drake. And guess what? I need to go back and forth with you two each week, buddy.
Whoever's editing it, clip that. I need you. That's all I need.
There it is. There it is. BYU fans, JT Wister has one message for you. Just that clip over and over. From the aforementioned talking SEC and Brett Yormark to the entirety of the Jake Retzlaff situation to how we began the show. This was good. Thank you guys.
Hey,
absolutely, brother, man.
Always a pleasure.
Always fun.
Maybe let's just kick. I mean, I have the power to kick everybody else out next week. I can just make it us four, and we'll see. I'll pitch that to the upload.
Yeah, no Cam, no Parker. We could just go down the list.
Yeah, there's just no chaos here.
Nick was here. Did you just not realize that he was?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Nick, I should have had him. I should have put him in. That's Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars talking all things BYU. Jake Retzlaff of Locked On Utes. Cody Stovall, Locked On Oklahoma State. This has been and always will be. Thanks for making our show as your first listen every single day. Locked On the Dos Grande Squad.